"Sir, we need you to empty your pockets," one guard said, his hand resting near his belt. Cole's hands trembled as he reached into his jacket. Behind the guards, through the small window in the door, he could see her. Stella Ross, the flight attendant who had pointed at him just 5 minutes ago. She stood with her arms crossed, a satisfied look on her face, nodding as she spoke to another airport employee. "This is a mistake," Cole said, his voice shaking. "I'm the pilot. I'm Captain Richardson. I'm supposed to be flying Flight 447 to Chicago in 20 minutes. "That's what they all say," another guard muttered. Cole felt his stomach drop. The wallet he pulled from his pocket fell to the table. His pilot's license, his ID, everything that proved who he was scattered across the surface. But the guards weren't looking at his credentials. They were looking at him like he was a criminal. "The flight attendant said she saw you taking a passenger's laptop from the overhead bin," the first guard said. "Said you were acting suspicious, trying to hide it under your jacket." "What? No. I would never," Cole's voice cracked. Sweat beaded on his forehead. The guard held up a hand. "Save it. We're checking the security footage now." Through the window, Cole saw Stella walk away, her head held high, her blonde ponytail swinging behind her. She didn't look back. She didn't seem to care that she'd just destroyed his life with a single false accusation. Cole thought about his daughter, Maya, waiting for him at home in Detroit. He thought about the promise he'd made to her that morning: "Daddy will be home tomorrow, sweetheart. We'll go get ice cream." He thought about his mother, who had cleaned houses for 30 years to help pay for his flight school. He thought about every door that had been slammed in his face, every person who had doubted him, every time someone had looked at him and seen a threat instead of a trained professional. And now this. "Please," Cole whispered. "Just check my ID. Call the airline. I'm telling you the truth." The youngest guard picked up Cole's pilot's license and squinted at it. For a moment, something flickered across his face, doubt, maybe, or recognition that they might have made a terrible mistake. But before he could speak, the door burst open. Stella Ross walked in, and this time she wasn't alone. 20 minutes earlier, Cole had been having the best day he'd had in months. The morning sun streamed through the windows of Detroit Metropolitan Airport as Cole walked through the terminal, his rolling suitcase clicking rhythmically behind him. He'd gotten 8 hours of sleep for the first time in weeks. His daughter had made him laugh so hard at breakfast that orange juice had come out of his nose. The weather was perfect for flying, clear skies all the way to Chicago. "Morning, Captain Richardson," called out Pete, one of the gate agents who'd been working at the airport for 20 years. "Morning, Pete." Cole waved back, a genuine smile on his face. He loved this part of his job. He loved walking through the airport in his uniform, loved the way kids' faces lit up when they saw a pilot, and loved knowing that in an hour, he'd be doing what he was born to do, flying. Cole had dreamed of being a pilot since he was 6 years old. His uncle had taken him to an air show in Michigan, and watching those planes dance across the sky had changed something inside him. From that day on, every birthday wish, every penny saved, every hour studied had been aimed at one goal: earning his wings. It hadn't been easy. Flight school was expensive. Jobs were scarce. And there were the looks, the passengers who seemed surprised to see a black pilot, the colleagues who questioned his qualifications, the countless small moments that reminded him he had to be twice as good to be considered half as competent. But he'd made it. 12 years of flying, thousands of hours in the air, a perfect safety record. He was good at his job. Better than good. He was excellent. Cole checked his watch. He had 30 minutes before boarding started. Plenty of time to grab a coffee and review the flight plan. That's when he saw the woman struggling with her overhead bag. She was elderly, maybe 75, with white hair and glasses that kept sliding down her nose. She stood in the waiting area near gate 17, his gate, trying to lift a carry-on bag that was clearly too heavy for her. "Let me help you with that, ma'am," Cole said, setting down his own bag and reaching for hers. The woman's face flooded with relief. "Oh, thank you, young man. These old arms aren't what they used to be." Cole lifted the bag easily, it was surprisingly light, and placed it on the seat next to her. "There you go. Are you flying to Chicago?" "Yes, visiting my grandson. He just had a baby, my first great-grandchild." Her eyes sparkled with joy. "Congratulations. That's wonderful." Cole smiled. "Well, I'm your pilot today, so I'll make sure we get you there safely." "You're the pilot?" The woman looked surprised, but then her face broke into a warm smile. "How wonderful. My grandson would be so excited to know that. He's always talking about diversity in aviation." They chatted for another minute before Cole excused himself. He needed that coffee, and he wanted to check in with his co-pilot before the flight that he never noticed Stella Ross watching him from across the gate area. He never saw the way her eyes narrowed when she saw him help the elderly woman. He never saw her pull out her phone and make a call, her voice low and urgent. Cole walked toward the pilot's lounge, his mind already on the flight ahead. He was thinking about the weather patterns, about the slight headwind they might encounter over Lake Michigan, about whether he'd have time to surprise Maya with a gift when he got home tomorrow. He had just reached the entrance to the crew area when someone grabbed his arm. "Excuse me, sir. Airport security. We need you to come with us." Cole turned, confused. Is something wrong? Two security guards stood behind him, their faces serious. Other travelers were starting to stare. "Just come with us, please. We have some questions." "Questions about what?" "I'm a pilot. I have a flight." "Now, sir." The guard's grip tightened on his arm. Cole's confusion turned to fear. People were definitely staring now. He could hear whispers. Someone was recording on their phone. Okay. But there's been some kind of mistake. They led him through the terminal, past shops and restaurants, past families and business travelers. Cole kept his head up, trying to maintain his dignity, but inside he was panicking. What was happening? What had he done? They brought him to a small security office and shut the door. That's when he saw her through the window. Stella Ross. The flight attendant who was supposed to be working his flight. She was talking to another security guard, pointing back toward the gate, her expression serious and concerned. And Cole understood. He didn't know why or how, but he understood that whatever was happening, it had something to do with her. "Sir, we need you to empty your pockets." The rest happened in a blur. The accusations. The disbelief on his face. The way the guards looked at him, not like a captain, not like a professional, but like a suspect. Like a criminal. Like someone who didn't belong. Now, standing in that cramped office with his wallet and credentials spread across the table, Cole felt something break inside him. He'd worked so hard. He'd done everything right. And still, it wasn't enough. A single accusation from a flight attendant, and everything he'd built could disappear. The door opened. Stella walked in with another guard. "That's him," she said, pointing directly at Cole. Her voice was clear and confident, without a trace of doubt. "I saw him take the laptop from the overhead compartment. He tried to hide it under his jacket. When I confronted him, he walked away quickly. Suspicious behavior. I had no choice but to report it." Cole stared at her, his mouth falling open. "What are you talking about?" "I helped an elderly woman with her bag. I never touched any laptop. I'm the pilot." "Sir, calm down," one of the guards warned. "I am calm." But Cole's voice was rising despite himself. "This is insane. Check the cameras. You'll see I'm telling the truth." Stella shook her head slowly, a small smile playing at the corners of her lips. "I know what I saw. And honestly, I'm not surprised. You know how it is with these people. They see an opportunity and they take it." The room went silent. Even the guards looked uncomfortable. "These people?" Cole repeated, his voice dropping to a whisper. "What do you mean by these people?" Stella shrugged. "I'm just saying. You can't be too careful these days. I was doing my job, protecting our passengers." Cole felt rage building in his chest, hot and dangerous. But beneath the rage was something worse, humiliation. Helplessness. The knowledge that in this moment, her word meant more than his uniform, his credentials, his 12 years of perfect service. "I want my lawyer," Cole said quietly. "And I want you to call the airline. Now." The senior guard nodded. "We're already pulling the security footage. If you're telling the truth, it'll show that." "When I'm telling the truth," Cole corrected. "When? Not if." But even as he said it, he wondered, would it matter? How many times had he seen footage of incidents like this? How many times had the evidence been ignored, twisted, or dismissed? How many times had someone who looked like him been assumed guilty until proven innocent, and sometimes even after being proven innocent? Stella checked her watch. "Well, if we're done here, I need to get back to the gate. We have a flight to prepare for." "You're not going anywhere," the senior guard said. "You're the accuser. You need to stay until we verify your statement." For the first time, Stella's confidence wavered. "But the flight? We'll have to wait." The guard's voice was firm. Cole watched emotions flicker across Stella's face. Annoyance. Anger. And something else, was that fear? Did she realize she might have made a mistake? Or was she afraid she was about to be caught in a lie? Another guard entered the room, carrying a laptop. "We pulled the footage from the gate area. You all need to see this." Cole's heart hammered as they set up the laptop. This was it. This was the moment that would determine everything, his career, his reputation, his future. The footage played. Cole saw himself walking through the terminal. Saw himself stop to help the elderly woman. Saw himself lift her bag, not a laptop, but a carry-on bag, and place it on the seat. Saw himself smile and chat with her before walking away. The guards watched in silence. Then they turned to look at Stella Ross. "Ma'am," the senior guard said slowly. "Can you explain this?" Stella's face had gone pale. I must have, maybe I was mistaken about which bag." "You said you saw him take a laptop and hide it under his jacket," the guard interrupted. "The footage clearly shows him helping a passenger with her carry-on bag. Nothing was hidden. Nothing was stolen. You made a false accusation. It was an honest mistake." Stella's voice rose, defensive now. "From where I was standing, it looked suspicious. You can't blame me for being careful." "You called him these people," one of the younger guards said quietly. "That wasn't about being careful." The room felt charged, electric with tension. Cole stood very still, afraid that if he moved, if he spoke, he might break down entirely. The relief was overwhelming, but so was the anger. So was the exhaustion of knowing that this wouldn't be the last time. That tomorrow, or next week, or next month, he might face this same suspicion, this same automatic assumption of guilt. The senior guard turned to Cole. "Captain Richardson, on behalf of airport security, I apologize. This should never have happened. You're free to go." "Free to go?" Cole's voice was hollow. "I've missed my flight. I've been humiliated in front of passengers and colleagues. I've been accused of theft and treated like a criminal. And you're telling me I'm free to go?" "Sir, I understand you're upset." "Upset?" Cole laughed, but there was no humor in it. "I'm devastated. I'm furious. And I want to know what happens to her." He pointed at Stella. "What consequences does she face for lying? For making a racist accusation? For trying to destroy my career?" The guard looked uncomfortable. "We'll file a report with the airline. It's up to them to determine appropriate disciplinary action." "That's not good enough," Cole said. But even as he said it, he knew how this would go. There would be an investigation. Maybe a slap on the wrist. Maybe a written warning. Stella would probably keep her job, keep her reputation, keep walking through life never understanding the harm she'd caused. Unless, Cole pulled out his phone. His hands were still shaking, but his mind was clear now. "I'm calling someone," he announced. "Someone who needs to know about this." "Sir, you don't need to." "Yes," Cole interrupted, his voice steady and strong for the first time since this nightmare began. "Yes, I do." He scrolled through his contacts and pressed a name. The phone rang once. Twice. Then a familiar voice answered. "Cole? Is everything okay?" "Marcus," Cole said, and then stopped, remembering something. He wasn't supposed to use that name. But in this moment, it didn't matter. What mattered was what happened next. Cole took a deep breath. "I need you to listen carefully. Something just happened at the airport. Something that can't be ignored. Something that's going to change everything." Through the phone, he could hear the concern in the response, "Tell me." And as Cole began to explain, he watched Stella Ross's face turn from pale to gray. She seemed to understand suddenly that this wasn't just another incident that would be swept under the rug. This was different. This phone call was going to change her life. She just didn't know how much yet. If you believe no one should be judged by the color of their skin but by their character and qualifications, hit that like button right now. Subscribe if you stand against racism and discrimination in all its forms, because staying silent makes us part of the problem. Share this story with someone who needs to hear it. We can't fight injustice if we keep these conversations private. Comment below, have you ever witnessed or experienced discrimination? What did you do? Let's talk about it, because change starts with honest conversations. The voice on the other end of the phone belonged to James Montgomery, and he was the last person Stella Ross would have wanted Cole to call. James Montgomery was the regional director of operations for Great Lakes Airlines, the company they both worked for. He was also Cole's former flight instructor, his mentor, and the man who had personally recommended Cole for his captain position 5 years ago, but there was something else about James Montgomery that made this call particularly dangerous for Stella. He was also the nephew of Senator Patricia Montgomery, the Michigan senator who had just launched a major campaign against workplace discrimination. The senator who had been all over the news for the past month, pushing new legislation that would impose serious penalties on companies that failed to address racist incidents. Cole's voice was steady as he spoke into the phone. "James, I need you to come to the airport security office at Gate 17. Right now. Something has happened that you need to see with your own eyes." "I'm already in the airport," James replied, his voice concerned. "I came in early to observe some of our flight operations. I'll be there in 3 minutes. Don't say anything else until I arrive." Cole ended the call and looked at Stella. Her face had lost all color now. She seemed to be doing mental calculations, trying to figure out if there was any way to escape this situation. Who did you just call? She asked, though her voice suggested she already suspected the answer. My boss, Cole said simply. Our boss. One of the security guards shifted uncomfortably. Ma'am, maybe you should sit down. But Stella couldn't sit. She paced the small office like a trapped animal, her mind racing. She'd worked for Great Lakes Airlines for 3 years. It was a good job with good benefits. She'd been careful, mostly. Sure, she'd made comments before, little jokes about passengers, assumptions about people based on how they looked. But everyone did that, didn't they? It was just normal. She'd never actually gotten in trouble for it. But she'd also never accused a pilot of theft before. Never had her words caught on camera. Never had security footage directly contradict her story. And she definitely never had the regional director of operations personally called to witness her mistake. The minutes crawled by like hours. Nobody spoke. The security guard stood by the door, occasionally glancing at Stella with expressions that ranged from disgust to pity. Cole stood with his arms crossed, his jaw tight, his eyes fixed on the door. Then the door opened, and James Montgomery walked in. He was a tall man in his 50s, with gray hair and sharp eyes that missed nothing. He wore a crisp suit and carried himself with the authority of someone who had spent 30 years in aviation. He looked around the room, taking in the scene, the security guards, the laptop still showing the frozen footage, Cole's rigid posture, and Stella's panicked expression. Someone tell me what happened, James said. His voice was calm, but there was steel underneath it. The senior security guard stepped forward and explained everything. The accusation. The detention of Captain Richardson. The security footage that proved Stella had lied. The comment about these people. James listened without interrupting. His face remained neutral, but Cole could see a muscle twitching in his jaw. When the guard finished, James turned to look at the laptop screen. Show me the footage, he said. They played it again. James watched Cole help the elderly woman, watched him smile and chat with her, watched him walk away with nothing in his hands but his own belongings. Then they showed him the timestamp of when Stella had made her call to security, claiming she'd witnessed a theft. Miss Ross, James said, turning to face her. Do you have anything to say? Stella's mouth opened and closed. It was a mistake. An honest mistake. From where I was standing, it looked like. From where you were standing, James interrupted, you should have been able to see exactly what Captain Richardson was doing. The footage shows you had a clear line of sight. You weren't mistaken, Miss Ross. You lied. No. I mean, maybe I was confused. And the comment? James's voice grew harder. The one about these people? Were you confused about that too? Stella's face flushed red. I didn't mean it the way it sounded. I was just what? Just assuming that a black pilot in full uniform, with credentials and a perfect service record, was stealing from passengers? Just perpetuating exactly the kind of racist stereotypes that have no place in this industry or anywhere else. The room was silent except for Stella's rapid breathing. James pulled out his phone. I'm calling HR. And legal. And. He paused, his expression grim, I'm calling my aunt. Senator Montgomery needs to know about this. She's been collecting examples of workplace discrimination for her new legislation. This will be a perfect case study. No, please. Stella's composure finally cracked completely. Tears sprang to her eyes. Please, I need this job. I have bills, I have rent. And Captain Richardson has a career that you tried to destroy, James said coldly. He has a reputation that you attempted to ruin with a false accusation. He has a daughter who might have grown up without her father if this situation had escalated differently. Did you think about any of that? Stella was crying openly now, mascara running down her cheeks. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I made a mistake. You made a choice, Cole spoke for the first time since James arrived. His voice was quiet but firm. You saw a black man in a pilot's uniform and you chose not to see his credentials. You chose not to see his professionalism. You chose to see a threat. That wasn't a mistake, Stella. That was racism. I'm not racist. Stella protested desperately. I have black friends. I voted for. Stop, James held up his hand. Just stop. Every word you say is making this worse. He turned to the security guards. I need copies of all footage, all reports, and all witness statements. Send them to my office and to our legal department within the hour. Then he made his calls. First to HR. Then to legal. The conversations were brief and professional, but Cole could hear the anger underneath James's controlled tone. Finally, James made one more call. Aunt Patricia? It's James. I'm at the airport. Something just happened that you need to know about. Can you conference in the airline CEO? Stella's legs gave out. She sank into a chair, her face buried in her hands. Within minutes, James's phone rang. He put it on speaker. James, this is Richard Chen, CEO of Great Lakes Airlines. Senator Montgomery briefed me on the situation. Tell me exactly what happened. As James recounted the incident, Cole watched Stella's career crumble in real time. The CEO's voice grew colder with each detail. Miss Ross is terminated effective immediately, the CEO said when James finished. Security, please escort her from the premises. James, I want a full investigation into whether there have been other incidents we've missed. And I want Captain Richardson to know that Great Lakes Airlines stands behind him completely. We'll be issuing a public apology and… Richard, Senator Montgomery's voice came through the phone. This is exactly the kind of case I've been talking about. The new legislation will require companies to not just fire employees like Miss Ross, but to report them to a federal database. She won't be able to work in aviation again. This behavior has to have real consequences. Stella looked up, her face a mask of horror. You can't do this. One mistake can't ruin my whole life. One mistake? Cole's voice was sharp now. How many pilots like me have you looked at with suspicion? How many times have you made assumptions based on skin color? This wasn't one mistake, Stella. This was just the first time you got caught. The security guards moved toward Stella. Ma'am, we need you to come with us. You'll be escorted out of the airport and your security clearance will be revoked. As they led her toward the door, Stella turned back one last time. Captain Richardson, please. I'm begging you. Tell them you forgive me. Tell them to give me another chance. Cole looked at her for a long moment. Part of him, the part that had been raised to be forgiving, to turn the other cheek, wanted to show mercy. But another part of him, the part that was tired of being treated as guilty until proven innocent, the part that remembered every suspicious look and unwarranted assumption, couldn't do it. I hope you learn from this, he said finally. I hope you become a better person. But I won't lie to save your job. You made your choices. Now you live with the consequences. The door closed behind Stella and the guards. The room felt suddenly larger, quieter. James put a hand on Cole's shoulder. Are you okay? Cole let out a long breath. No. But I will be. Take the rest of the day off. We'll assign another pilot to your flight. No, Cole said firmly. I want to fly. I want to do my job. I want to prove that I belong in that cockpit. James smiled slightly. You don't have anything to prove, Cole. But if you want to fly, then fly. Those passengers are lucky to have you. As Cole left the security office, he felt something shift inside him. The fear and humiliation were still there, but something else was growing alongside them. Pride. Determination. And the knowledge that he'd stood up for himself when it mattered most. But as he walked back toward his gate, he had no idea that the day's drama was far from over. In fact, the real storm was just beginning. Cole walked back through the terminal with his head held high, but inside, his emotions were a tangled mess. His hands still trembled slightly. His heart still raced. The adrenaline from the confrontation was beginning to fade, leaving behind exhaustion and a dull, throbbing anger. As he approached Gate 17, he expected to see frustration on the passengers' faces. After all, their flight had been delayed by almost 40 minutes now. They'd be annoyed, impatient, ready to complain. He prepared himself for rolled eyes and heavy sighs. But what he found instead made him stop in his tracks. The entire gate area had erupted into chaos, but not the kind he'd expected. A crowd of at least 30 passengers stood in a tight cluster near the gate desk, their voices raised in heated discussion. Some were on their phones, recording videos. Others were showing each other their own phone screens. The energy in the air was electric, charged with emotion. That's him, someone shouted. That's the pilot. Cole froze. His first instinct was to retreat, to hide, to avoid whatever was coming. But before he could move, an elderly white woman broke from the crowd and rushed toward him. It was the same woman he'd helped with her bag. Young man, she called out, her eyes wet with tears. Are you all right? I heard what that horrible flight attendant did to you. Cole blinked in surprise. You heard? Everyone heard, said a young black man in a business suit, stepping forward. I was sitting right there when security took you away. I recorded the whole thing. I saw how they grabbed you, how they treated you like a criminal. I recorded it too, said a Hispanic woman holding her phone up. I've already posted it on social media. It's been shared 2,000 times in the last 20 minutes. Cole's mind reeled. He'd been so focused on what was happening in the security office that he hadn't considered the passengers. Hadn't thought about the fact that his detention had been public, visible to everyone at the gate. I saw what really happened, the elderly woman continued, gripping Cole's arm. I saw you help me with my bag. You were nothing but kind and professional. And that woman, that flight attendant, she lied. She stood right over there and told security you'd stolen something. I heard her with my own ears. We all heard her, said another passenger, a middle-aged white man in a Michigan State sweatshirt. And we heard what she said about these people. That was disgusting. Absolutely disgusting. More passengers crowded around Cole now, their voices overlapping in a chorus of support and outrage. This is exactly what's wrong with this country. I flew with you 2 months ago, Captain Richardson. You're an excellent pilot. My son wants to be a pilot, and he's going to hear about this, about how you stood up for yourself. Someone needs to make sure that woman never works in aviation again. Cole felt overwhelmed by the surge of support. After years of suspicious looks and quiet discrimination, after an hour of being treated like a criminal, this unexpected solidarity was almost too much to process. The gate agent, a young woman named Sarah who Cole had worked with many times before, pushed through the crowd. Her eyes were red, like she'd been crying. Captain Richardson, she said, her voice thick with emotion. I am so sorry. I should have said something when I saw security take you. I should have defended you. I knew you wouldn't steal anything. I froze. I was a coward. Sarah, it's okay. No, it's not okay. Sarah's voice rose. None of this is okay. Stella Ross has been making racist comments for months. I've heard her. Other crew members have heard her. And none of us reported it because we didn't want to cause trouble. We let this happen. Wait, Cole said slowly. She's done this before? Made racist comments? Sarah nodded miserably. Not accusations like today. But comments. Jokes about passengers. Assumptions about people based on how they looked. She once refused to serve a Middle Eastern man because she said he looked suspicious. But he was just a tired businessman trying to get home to his family. Did anyone report her? Cole asked. One flight attendant tried, Sarah said. But Stella claimed it was all misunderstandings. She cried and said she was being bullied. Management gave her a warning and that was it. She learned to be more careful about who was listening. Cole felt his anger reigniting. This wasn't just one bad moment. This was a pattern. Stella Ross had been discriminating against passengers and colleagues for months, maybe years, and the airline had done nothing meaningful to stop it. I'm reporting all of this, Sarah said firmly. I'm writing down every incident I can remember. Every comment, every joke, every time she treated someone differently because of how they looked. I should have done it months ago. I'm done being silent. Me too, said another gate agent, stepping forward. I've worked with Stella on 6 flights. I have stories. I'm a flight attendant too, said a woman in uniform who'd been standing in the crowd. Different airline, but I've heard stories about her from other crew members. Everyone knew she was trouble. Everyone knew she had issues. Cole looked around at all these people, passengers and airline employees, and felt something profound shifting. For years, he'd carried the weight of discrimination mostly alone, never quite sure if others saw what he saw, if they understood what he experienced. But now, here were dozens of witnesses, people who had seen the truth and were willing to speak up. Captain Richardson, said the businessman who'd recorded the incident. I'm an attorney. If you decide to take legal action against the airline or against Stella Ross, I want to offer my services pro bono. What happened to you today was wrong on every level. I'm a journalist, said a woman with a press badge. I write for the Detroit Free Press. This story needs to be told. Would you be willing to give an interview? I work in HR for a Fortune 500 company, said another man. What that flight attendant did would result in immediate termination at my company, plus a full investigation into whether management enabled her behavior. Your airline needs to answer some serious questions. The offers of support kept coming. Passengers exchanged contact information, promising to serve as witnesses if needed. Several people showed Cole their social media posts about the incident, the videos, the outraged comments, the hundreds and then thousands of shares. It's going viral, said a teenage girl, holding up her phone. Look! #Justice for Captain Richardson is trending in Michigan. People are calling for boycotts of the airline if they don't take action. Cole took the phone and scrolled through the posts. There were the videos of his detention, yes. But there were also hundreds of comments from other people, other pilots, other professionals of color, sharing their own stories of discrimination in the workplace. The incident at Gate 17 had touched a nerve, had opened a floodgate of experiences that people had been holding inside. This is bigger than just me, Cole said softly. Yes, the elderly woman agreed. This is about all of us. About the kind of world we want to live in. About whether we stay silent when we see injustice, or whether we speak up. A commotion near the gate desk drew everyone's attention. 3 people in business suits were striding toward the gate, 2 men and a woman, all carrying briefcases and wearing expressions of grim determination. "That's the airline's legal team," Sarah whispered to Cole. "This is about to get very serious." The lead attorney, a woman with sharp features and sharper eyes, approached Cole directly. "Captain Richardson, I'm Victoria Mills, Senior Counsel for Great Lakes Airlines. We need to speak with you immediately. In private." Cole felt his stomach tighten. "About what?" "About how we're going to make this right," Victoria said. "About the settlement we're prepared to offer you. About the changes we're implementing immediately to ensure this never happens again. And about?" She glanced at the crowd of passengers recording everything on their phones, "about damage control." "Damage control?" Cole repeated, and something in his voice made several passengers step closer, protective. "Is that what I am to you? Damage?" No, Victoria said quickly. "That came out wrong. What I meant was..." "What she meant," interrupted one of the male attorneys, "is that this incident is exploding on social media. It's on the news. Senator Montgomery is giving a press conference in an hour about workplace discrimination, and she's using your case as her primary example. The airline stock has already dropped 2 points. We need to get ahead of the story." "Get ahead of it?" Cole felt his anger rising again. "This isn't a story. This is my life. This is what I experience as a black pilot in America. And you want to get ahead of it?" "Captain Richardson, please," Victoria held up her hands. "I understand you're upset. You have every right to be. What happened to you was unconscionable. Stella Ross has been terminated. We're prepared to offer you a substantial settlement, a public apology, and guaranteed protection from any retaliation. We want to make this right." "How substantial?" asked the attorney passenger who'd offered his services. Victoria shot him an annoyed look. "That's between us and Captain Richardson." "Actually," Cole said, his voice growing stronger, "I think it should be public. I think everything about this should be public. Because if it happens behind closed doors, nothing changes. You cut me a check, I sign an NDA, and next month or next year, some other pilot or flight attendant or passenger of color gets accused of something they didn't do. And the cycle continues. We're implementing mandatory anti-racism training for all employees," Victoria said. "And we're creating a new system for reporting discrimination incidents. We're taking this seriously." "Training?" Sarah the gate agent laughed bitterly. "We already have training. We sit through videos once a year and click complete on a computer module. That doesn't change hearts. That doesn't change the culture that let Stella Ross make racist comments for months without consequences." Victoria's jaw tightened. "What do you suggest, then?" "Real accountability," Cole said. "Not just firing Stella Ross and hoping the story goes away. A public investigation into how many complaints were ignored. Public results of that investigation. Public consequences for anyone who enabled her behavior. And real, meaningful changes to how your airline handles discrimination." "That could take months," the male attorney protested. "The damage to the airline's reputation is deserved," Cole interrupted. "If your airline enabled racism, then it deserves to face consequences. Just like Stella Ross is facing consequences now." Victoria and her colleagues exchanged glances. Cole could see them calculating, weighing their options, trying to figure out the least damaging path forward. Then Victoria's phone buzzed. She glanced at it and her face went pale. "What?" one of her colleagues asked. "Senator Montgomery's press conference," Victoria said quietly. "She just announced new federal legislation. Any airline with substantiated discrimination complaints will face massive fines and federal oversight. And she specifically named Great Lakes Airlines. We're her example." The crowd of passengers erupted in cheers and applause. Cole felt a surge of vindication, but also something else, a sense that this moment was spiraling into something much larger than he'd anticipated. He'd wanted justice, wanted Stella Ross to face consequences for her actions. But now it seemed like his experience was becoming a catalyst for something bigger, something that would reach far beyond Gate 17. "Captain Richardson," Victoria said, her voice urgent now. "We really need to talk. Privately. The CEO wants to speak with you personally. There's a car waiting outside to take you to headquarters." "No," Cole said firmly. "If the CEO wants to talk to me, he can come here. To this gate. In front of these passengers. Because they're witnesses. They're part of this story. And I'm not hiding this conversation." Victoria looked like she wanted to argue, but before she could speak, her phone rang. She answered it, listened for a moment, and then turned to her colleagues with an expression of barely controlled panic. "The CEO is on his way," she announced. "He'll be here in 10 minutes. The tension at Gate 17 ratcheted up another notch. Passengers who'd been about to leave for other flights stayed to watch. More people gathered, drawn by the commotion and the growing crowd. Airport security appeared but kept their distance, clearly unsure how to handle a situation that was technically peaceful but felt moments away from exploding. Cole stood at the center of it all, feeling like he was standing on the edge of a cliff. Behind him was his old life, the quiet acceptance of discrimination, the careful navigation of a world that often saw him as guilty until proven innocent. Ahead of him was something unknown, something that felt both terrifying and exhilarating. His phone buzzed. A text from his daughter. "Daddy, you're on the news. My teacher showed us. She says you're a hero." Cole's eyes burned with sudden tears. A hero. His little girl thought he was a hero. He typed back, "I'm just doing what's right, sweetheart. That's what heroes do." Another text appeared, this one from his mother. "I'm so proud of you, baby. So proud. Your father would have been proud too." His father. Cole thought about the man who died when Cole was 15, the man who'd worked 2 jobs to help save for flight school, the man who'd told him again and again, "Don't let them make you small. Don't let them tell you where you don't belong. You belong anywhere you have the skill and courage to be." Cole looked up at the crowd of passengers, white, black, Hispanic, Asian, old, young, rich, poor, all united in this moment by a shared sense that something fundamentally wrong had happened and needed to be made right. "Thank you," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "All of you. Thank you for seeing the truth. Thank you for speaking up. Thank you for reminding me that I'm not alone." The elderly woman reached out and took his hand. "You were never alone, dear. We just needed to be brave enough to stand with you." In the distance, Cole could see a group of people in expensive suits striding through the terminal. The CEO and his entourage were arriving. The real confrontation was about to begin. And this time, Cole Richardson wasn't facing it alone. Richard Chen, CEO of Great Lakes Airlines, was not having a good day. He'd woken up that morning expecting to review quarterly reports and attend a boring board meeting. Instead, he was now rushing through Detroit Metropolitan Airport, trailed by 6 executives and a crisis management team, about to face the biggest public relations disaster of his career. And it was all being recorded by dozens of cameras. As Richard approached Gate 17, he could see the crowd. At least 100 people now, maybe more. Passengers, airline employees, airport workers who'd come to watch. All of them holding phones, all of them recording, all of them waiting to see what he would do. In the center of the crowd stood Captain Cole Richardson, still in his pilot's uniform, his head held high despite everything he'd been through. Richard took a deep breath and walked forward. The crowd parted to let him through, but he could feel their hostility. This wasn't a friendly audience. These people wanted answers, wanted justice, and they wouldn't accept corporate double-talk. "Captain Richardson," Richard said, extending his hand. "I'm Richard Chen. I came as soon as I heard what happened. I want to apologize personally for what you went through today." Cole looked at the outstretched hand for a long moment before shaking it. "Apologies are easy, Mr. Chen. What are you going to do about it?" "We've terminated Stella Ross," Richard said. "Effective immediately. She'll never work in aviation again if I have anything to say about it." "That's one person," Cole replied. "But your gate agent just told me that Stella had been making racist comments for months. That someone tried to report her and nothing meaningful was done. So my question isn't about Stella Ross. My question is about your company. How did you let this happen?" Richard felt 100 eyes on him. This was the moment. How he answered this question would determine not just the airline's future, but his own. "You're right," Richard said, and he saw surprise flicker across several faces. "We failed. Our reporting system failed. Our management failed. I failed. Somewhere along the line, we created a culture where discrimination could exist in the shadows, where complaints could be minimized or ignored, where employees felt afraid to speak up." "Admitting it isn't enough," said the attorney passenger, stepping forward. "What systemic changes are you implementing?" Richard turned to face the crowd, not just Cole. If this was going to be a public reckoning, then he needed to address everyone. "Effective today, we're implementing several immediate changes," Richard announced. "First, we're creating an independent discrimination hotline, run by a third-party organization, where any employee or passenger can report incidents anonymously. These reports will go directly to a board-level committee, bypassing middle management entirely." "Second," Cole prompted. "Second, we're hiring an outside firm to conduct a complete audit of every discrimination complaint filed in the last 5 years. Every single one. We're going to review how each was handled, whether action was taken, and whether management dropped the ball. The results will be made public." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Several people looked skeptical, but others seemed cautiously hopeful. "Third," Richard continued, "we're implementing a zero-tolerance policy. Not the lip-service kind we had before. Real consequences. Any employee found to have made discriminatory comments or actions will be terminated immediately. Any manager who fails to properly investigate or report discrimination will face the same consequences. What about Captain Richardson? Asked Sarah, the gate agent. What are you doing to make this right for him specifically? Richard turned back to Cole. I'd like to discuss that with you privately. No, Cole interrupted. You want it private, so I'll sign an NDA and keep quiet. So this all goes away. But I don't want it to go away, Mr. Chen. I want it to matter. Then what do you want? Richard asked, and there was genuine curiosity in his voice now. Cole thought for a moment. What did he want? Money? An apology? Revenge? No. He wanted something more important than any of that. I want a seat at the table, Cole said finally. I want to be part of the team that redesigns your discrimination policies. I want other pilots and flight attendants of color to be part of that team too. Not as tokens. Not as checkbox diversity. But as real partners who have real power to make real changes. You want to help fix the system, Richard said slowly. I want to help build a better one, Cole corrected. Because the old system is broken. And you can't fix broken. You have to build new. Richard looked at Cole with what might have been respect. All right. You have a seat at the table. I'll form a task force, and you'll be co-chair alongside our VP of Human Resources. You'll have direct access to me, to the board, and to every resource you need. And I want protection, Cole added. Legal guarantees that I can't be fired, demoted, or retaliated against for speaking out. Not just for me, for any employee who reports discrimination. Done, Richard agreed. We'll put it in writing. Our legal team will draft something today. I want back pay, said a voice from the crowd. It was a black flight attendant Cole had never met before. I filed 3 complaints about racist passengers in the last year. I was told to not be so sensitive. I was passed over for a promotion that went to someone with less experience. I want compensation for the discrimination I faced. And I want my job back, said another voice. A Hispanic man in his 40s. I was fired 2 years ago for insubordination after I complained about a supervisor making jokes about immigrants. I want an investigation into whether my firing was retaliation. More voices joined in. One after another, employees and former employees came forward with their stories. Years of small injustices, of being overlooked or dismissed, of watching discrimination happen and feeling powerless to stop it. Richard listened to all of them, his expression growing more troubled with each story. This wasn't just about Stella Ross. This was about a disease that had infected his entire company, and he'd been too removed, too focused on profits and operations, to see it. We'll review every case, Richard said when the voices finally quieted. Every complaint, every firing, every passed-over promotion. If we find evidence of discrimination or retaliation, we'll make it right. Back pay, reinstatement, whatever is appropriate. That could cost millions, one of his executives whispered urgently. Then it costs millions, Richard said sharply. We should have spent that money preventing discrimination in the first place. Now we're paying the price for our failure. He turned back to Cole. Captain Richardson, I know words aren't enough. I know apologies don't undo what happened to you today. But I want you to know that I take full responsibility. This happened on my watch. I should have seen it. I should have stopped it. And I'm going to spend however long it takes to make sure it never happens again. Cole studied Richard's face, looking for signs of insincerity, of corporate manipulation. But what he saw instead was exhaustion and something that looked like genuine shame. Actions matter more than words, Mr. Chen, Cole said. So I'll believe it when I see it. Fair enough, Richard replied. When can you start? On the task force, I mean. After I fly this flight, Cole said, gesturing toward the plane waiting at the gate. These passengers have been delayed long enough because of Stella Ross's lies. It's time I did my job. The crowd burst into applause. Several passengers cheered. The elderly woman Cole had helped was crying openly now, dabbing at her eyes with a tissue. Ladies and gentlemen, Cole announced, his voice carrying across the gate area, Flight 447 to Chicago will begin boarding in 5 minutes. I apologize for the delay. And I promise you the smoothest flight I can give you. More applause. More cheers. Passengers began lining up, many of them stopping to shake Cole's hand or pat his shoulder as they passed. Richard Chen watched it all with an expression of wonder. They love you, he said quietly. They love justice, Cole corrected. They love seeing someone stand up and refuse to be knocked down. That's what gives people hope. You're going to be famous after today, Richard observed. The videos are everywhere. You're trending on every social media platform. The news networks are calling for interviews. I don't want to be famous, Cole said. I just want to fly. I just want to do my job without being accused of crimes I didn't commit. I just want to exist in this uniform without people assuming the worst about me. That's what we're going to work toward, Richard promised. Starting today. As Richard and his team walked away, Cole felt someone tap his shoulder. He turned to find James Montgomery, his mentor, standing there with tears in his eyes. I'm proud of you, son, James said. Not just for standing up for yourself, but for turning this into something bigger. For making it count. I had help, Cole said, gesturing to the crowd of passengers and employees who'd supported him. I couldn't have done this alone. But you started it, James said. You made the call. You refused to let it be swept under the rug. That took courage. Cole's phone buzzed again. Another text from his daughter, Daddy, when are you coming home? I want to give you the biggest hug ever. Cole smiled, the first genuine smile since this nightmare had begun. Soon, sweetheart, he typed back. Soon. But as he prepared to board the plane and finally do his job, Cole had no idea that the biggest challenge was still ahead. Because Stella Ross wasn't done. Not by a long shot. And what she was planning would test everything Cole had fought for today. If you believe in real accountability, not just empty apologies, hit that like button now. Subscribe if you want to see stories where justice actually wins, because we need more victories like this in the world. Share this with your workplace, your friends, your family. Change happens when we refuse to stay silent. Comment, what would you have done in Cole's position? Would you have accepted a private settlement or demanded public accountability? Let's discuss. Cole Richardson stood at the entrance of the aircraft, greeting passengers as they boarded Flight 447 to Chicago. Each person who passed offered a smile, a word of encouragement, or a handshake. The elderly woman he'd helped squeezed his hand and whispered, God bless you, Captain. His co-pilot, a young woman named Rachel Torres, met him in the cockpit with concerned eyes. Cole, are you sure you're okay to fly? After everything that just happened. I'm sure, Cole said, settling into his seat. Flying is the one place where everything makes sense to me. Where I'm just a pilot doing my job. I need this, Rachel. She nodded and began the pre-flight checks. The routine calmed Cole, switches, buttons, gauges, all exactly where they should be. In the cockpit, there was no room for assumptions or prejudice. Either you knew how to fly or you didn't. Either the plane was safe or it wasn't. Everything was clear, measurable, provable. As they prepared for takeoff, Cole heard a commotion in the cabin behind them. Rachel glanced back nervously. What's that about? One of the flight attendants, a young man named David, appeared in the cockpit doorway, his face flushed. Captain Richardson, we have a situation. A passenger is demanding to speak with you before takeoff. Cole's stomach tightened. What kind of situation? He says he doesn't feel safe with you as pilot. He's demanding a different crew. The words hit Cole like a punch to the chest. After everything that had just happened, after all the support from the other passengers, someone still saw him as a threat. I'll handle it, Cole said quietly, unbuckling his seatbelt. Cole, you don't have to, Rachel started. Yes, I do. Cole stood and walked into the cabin. The passenger was a white man in his 50s, red-faced and agitated. He stood in the aisle, blocking other passengers from reaching their seats. When he saw Cole approaching, he pointed an accusing finger. You're the pilot who was arrested, the man shouted. I saw it. Security had you detained. And now you expect us to trust you with our lives? The cabin fell silent. Every passenger turned to watch. Cole took a deep breath, fighting to keep his voice calm. Sir, I wasn't arrested. I was falsely accused by a flight attendant who has since been fired for lying. Security footage proved my innocence. I've done nothing wrong. That's what they all say, the man continued. I have a family. I'm not getting on a plane with a criminal as pilot. I'm not a criminal, Cole said, his voice harder now. I'm a captain with 12 years of experience and a perfect safety record. I've flown over 10,000 hours without incident. Your safety is my priority. I don't care about your record, the man spat. I saw what I saw. I want a different pilot. Before Cole could respond, the elderly woman he'd helped stood up from her seat. Young man, sit down and be quiet. You don't know what you're talking about. Ma'am, this doesn't concern you. It concerns all of us, she interrupted, her voice surprisingly strong. I was there. I saw everything. Captain Richardson helped me with my bag, and a racist flight attendant lied about him. He's been cleared completely. So either sit down and let this good man do his job, or get off this plane. I agree, said the businessman who'd offered his legal services. Sir, you're making a fool of yourself based on ignorance. Captain Richardson is exactly the kind of pilot I want flying my plane, someone with integrity who stands up for what's right. "Get off the plane if you're scared," called out another passenger. "The rest of us trust Captain Richardson completely." More voices joined in, a chorus of support that filled the cabin. The red-faced man looked around, realizing he was alone in his protest. His face grew even redder, this time with embarrassment. "Fine," he snapped. "I'll take a different flight." He grabbed his bag from the overhead bin and stormed toward the exit. As he passed Cole, he muttered under his breath, "This country is going to hell." Cole watched him go, feeling a mix of emotions, anger, sadness, and surprisingly, pity. That man would go through life seeing threats where there were none, judging people by their skin color instead of their character. He would miss out on connections, experiences, and understanding. In trying to protect himself from imaginary dangers, he'd made himself smaller, more fearful, more alone. The cabin door closed behind the departing passenger. David, the flight attendant, approached Cole. "I'm sorry you had to deal with that, Captain." "It's not your fault," Cole said. Then, louder, addressing all the passengers, "Ladies and gentlemen, I want to thank you for your support. Not just now, but earlier at the gate. What happened today was difficult, but knowing that so many of you saw the truth and stood up for it, that means more to me than I can express. Now, let's get you to Chicago safely." The passengers applauded as Cole returned to the cockpit. Rachel was waiting with a smile. "Ready to show them what a real pilot can do?" "Always," Cole said, settling back into his seat. The flight was smooth and uneventful, exactly the way Cole liked it. As they cruised at 35,000 feet, Cole looked out at the clouds and felt something shift inside him. The fear and humiliation from earlier were still there, but they were smaller now, manageable. What had grown larger was his sense of purpose. This wasn't just about him anymore. It was about every person who'd ever been judged unfairly, every professional who'd had their credentials questioned because of their skin color, every child who dreamed of a career but worried they wouldn't be accepted. His phone buzzed with a message from James Montgomery. "Senator Montgomery's legislation passed the Senate committee. It's going to the full Senate next week. Your case made the difference. You changed things, Cole." Cole smiled and put his phone away. Below, he could see Lake Michigan sparkling in the afternoon sun. Somewhere down there, his daughter was probably in school, telling her classmates about her dad the pilot. His mom was probably fielding calls from relatives who'd seen the news. His life had changed in ways he was still trying to understand. As they began their descent into Chicago, Rachel turned to him. "Can I ask you something?" "Sure." "How do you do it? How do you keep going when the world keeps trying to knock you down?" Cole thought about that for a moment. "I remember why I started flying in the first place. Because I loved it. Because it made me feel free. And I refused to let anyone take that away from me. My joy, my passion, my purpose, those belong to me. Not to Stella Ross. Not to that passenger who left. Not to anyone who tries to make me feel like I don't belong." Rachel nodded slowly. "I needed to hear that. Thank you." They landed smoothly in Chicago, and as passengers deplaned, many stopped to thank Cole personally. The elderly woman hugged him tightly. "You remind me of my grandson," she said. "Strong, brave, and kind. The world needs more people like you." As Cole walked through O'Hare Airport to catch his flight back to Detroit, he noticed people recognizing him. Some smiled and nodded. A few asked for photos. A young black boy in a pilot's costume ran up to him, eyes wide with excitement. "Are you the pilot from the videos?" the boy asked. "I am," Cole said, kneeling down to the boy's level. "I want to be a pilot too," the boy said shyly. "But my friend said I can't because of how you look?" Cole finished gently. The boy nodded. Cole put his hand on the boy's shoulder. "Listen to me. You can be anything you want to be. Pilot, astronaut, doctor, teacher, anything. Don't let anyone tell you different. Work hard, study hard, believe in yourself. And when people try to knock you down, and they will try, you stand back up. You hear me?" The boy's face lit up with hope. "I hear you." The boy's mother stood nearby, tears streaming down her face. "Thank you," she mouthed to Cole. As Cole continued through the airport, he felt exhausted but fulfilled. Today had been the worst day and the best day of his career. He'd faced discrimination, been falsely accused, been humiliated, but he'd also stood up for himself, sparked real change, and inspired others to speak their truth. His phone rang. It was an unknown number, but something told him to answer. "Captain Richardson? This is Michelle Obama's office. Mrs. Obama saw the news coverage and would like to invite you to speak at an upcoming education event about perseverance and breaking barriers. Would you be interested?" Cole almost dropped his phone. Yes, I would be honored." As he ended the call, Cole thought about the journey that had brought him here. From a 6-year-old boy at an air show, dreaming of flying, to a young man fighting through barriers and prejudice to earn his wings. To today, when he'd faced his worst nightmare and come out stronger. The fight wasn't over. There would be more Stella Rosses in the world, more passengers who judged him before knowing him, more moments when he'd have to prove himself when he shouldn't have to. But now he knew he wasn't alone. Now he knew that truth and justice could win if enough people were brave enough to stand up for them. Cole boarded his flight home to Detroit, to his daughter's hug and his mother's proud tears. As the plane took off, he looked out the window at the clouds and smiled. He was a pilot. He was a father. He was a voice for change. And nothing, absolutely nothing, could take that away from him.